So here we are now, having done our chord sequence, our harmonic progression for the first subject, and you can see that goes on for 16 bars. Then we've got a bridge passage for 8 bars, which would then go into the second subject. I haven't done the harmonic progression yet for the second subject because what I wanted to focus on was how to write a melody, and certainly we can look at doing this for the first subject. To write a decent melody, you have to be thinking about what chords have I got. So in the easiest terms, what I'm going to do for this first 8 bars is I'm going to highlight my chord sequence. I'm going to copy with Command and C, and then I'm going to paste that into the flute part. Okay. Now I'm very aware, of course, that the flute cannot play 3 notes at the same time, but what I get to do is I get to choose one note from the chord for each chord and keep it. Okay, so I'm just going to get rid of 2 notes in every chord, and I'm not doing this with any particular care, you know, I'm just going with what's there. And actually what I'm going to do here now, because I know that flutes can play pretty high, I'm going to stick that all up an octave with Command and the up cursor key. So if I listen to that now, what you should be able to do is hear a nice melody that'll be, although it'll be a bit boring, it should work quite nicely with that chord sequence. Okay, so that works really nice, it's not offensive, but like we said, we expected it to be a bit boring. So what we've got to do now is to try and make that a little bit more interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight these 7 bars. I'm leaving the 8 as semibreves because that makes a nice ending to the phrase, and I'm going to turn those all into minims. Having highlighted those, if I press that now as minims, then they all become minims. Okay? And what I'm going to do now is on these other minim rests, I'm now going to put a different note to the chords I have in the bar. So I know this is a C, E, a G and an E. So I've got a C here, so I'm now going to make this an E because that's also in my chord. I'm then going to make this a C because that's also in my chord here. I've got C, E, G, I've got an E, so what about if I make that a G? Oh, that's now a G. I've got B, D, G, so I've got D, why don't I make that a G again? And then I've got E, I've got C, E, G, so I'm going to make that a G. D, F, A, so I've got an A, so I'm going to have an F. I've got G, D, G, B, so I've already got B, why don't I make this a D? And then I've got a C already there. So, if I listen to that now, you should find that I've got, again, an unoffensive melody with my chord sequence. Okay, so that's fairly nice. And then I'm going to highlight those 7 bars again. And this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make those all crotchets. Okay, except for the that sixth bar, I'm going to keep those as minims. Okay, because we're moving towards the end of the phrase. So let's look at what we've got here. Now all I need to do is fill in some of the gaps. Well, C to E, if I get that rest, I can turn that into a D. Okay, E to C, D, E to G, F, okay, D to G. Well, there's 2 notes in there, so if I make those quavers, and make that a D and then an E, or even an E to an F, and then I can fill this one, make this one an F, A to F, so I can make this a G, and then I've got an F moving to a B. Right, so I'm going to fill this in with some kind of semi-quaver thing, I think. So if I stick a G, or even a quaver, A, okay, and I'm still left with some rests, but that could be nice. For example, I could look at what notes I've got here. I've got a G, so if I make this a G, and then make the next one an F, I'm approaching that note very nicely. And the same, I can stick a D there, E, F, G. So, and here possibly I could make this more interesting by making that a quaver. D, E, F, G, F, E, D, G. That's my next note. My next note is in fact an A. So I'm going to create that to be a minim, because that would be nice. And so let's have a listen to what that sounds like now. Okay, so that generally works really nicely. I actually think that one of the things I need to improve is in my fourth bar, 1, 2, 3, 4. I want that to feel a little bit more like the end of a 4-bar phrase. So I'm going to turn that into a minim like that. And something that's really interesting that can often get you extra marks is making the rhythm a little bit more interesting. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that G there and tie it to that G. Okay, and if I turn that into a quaver, make that an E, and then make that the rest. So all I've done there is swap the note around to give it just a little bit more momentum. That has a nice effect. So you can hear that this gives it a lot of momentum. You've got a little bit of syncopation here, which gets you marks, and an offbeat here, which gets you marks as well. So that's how we can write a melody. Start off with taking the copying and pasting the chords into the flute part, and you're taking the harmony notes, the notes that are in the chords, and turning them into semibreves, and then minims, as with a different note, then crotchets, and then start to pad out your melody a bit more. I hope that helps. Thanks for listening.